Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a deep dive into a book that has truly changed millions of lives globally. Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now, a guide to spiritual enlightenment. Our mission for you, our curious listener, is to extract the most powerful, actionable insights from this transformative work.
It really is incredible, isn't it, how widely this text has resonated. You see it everywhere. Everyday people, Buddhist monks, Christian nuns, even people in really tough situations like prison or facing serious illness.
And psychotherapists recommend it too, apparently.
They do. It's definitely one of those books people read again and again, and they often find, that its power actually deepens each time.
So our goal today is really to unpack how the power of now works. How does it help people lessen, or maybe even get rid of, suffering and this constant problem-making loop?
Right. It's about fostering this deep inner peace. And the way Tolle approaches it is by helping us let go of that mental, that emotional resistance to the present moment, to what he calls the suchness of now.
The suchness of now. Okay, what does he mean by that? And where did these ideas even come from?
That's a great place to start. The suchness is really just about seeing reality as it is.
Yeah.
Without all our mental labels and judgments getting in the way, like looking at a tree and just seeing the tree, not thinking, oh, that needs pruning, or that reminds me of.
Okay, pure observation.
Exactly. And the origin.
Yeah.
Well, it's deeply personal for Eckhart Tolle. It comes directly from his own experience.
Right, his backstory is pretty central to understanding it all.
Yeah.
He talks about living in this state of almost constant anxiety, right? And
Yeah.
deep depression, even suicidal thoughts,
Yeah.
up until he was about 30.
That's right. He describes this one specific night, waking up with this feeling of just absolute dread, feeling like his own existence was just loathsome. And then he had this thought that changed everything. I cannot live with myself any longer.
And that thought triggered something really interesting.
It did. It was this kind of paradox. He suddenly realized, wait, am I one or two? If I cannot live with myself, there must be two of me. There's the I doing the observing, and then there's the self that the I can't stand.
That's a profound distinction.
It was, and that insight just stopped his mind completely. He felt drawn into this intense energy, heard the words resist nothing, and then just fell into this void, this emptiness.
Wow. And after that?
For the next 5 months, apparently, he lived in this state of just uninterrupted, deep peace. Bliss, even.
Just constant peace.
That's what he describes. He later understood that the sheer pressure of his suffering had forced his consciousness to kind of withdraw, to stop identifying with that unhappy and deeply fearful self. He realized that self was just a fiction of the mind.
So what was left?
What was left was what he calls his true nature, the ever-present I am. Consciousness in its pure state before it gets tangled up with identifying with forms, with thoughts, with emotions.
And he famously spent years just sitting on park benches.
Almost 2 years, yeah. Just soaked in this intense joy. Eventually, he realized that what everyone else seemed to be looking for, well, it had already happened to him.
So people started asking him about it.
Exactly. They'd say, I want what you have. Can you give it to me? Or show me how to get it. And his answer was always pretty simple.
What did he?
He'd say, you have it already. You just can't feel it because your mind is making too much noise.
Your mind is making too much noise.
Ah.
Quite direct.
It is. And that simple answer, that core idea, eventually grew into the power of now.
Okay, so if his own breakthrough came from detaching from that fictional self, what does he say is the main thing stopping us from experiencing that? What's the biggest barrier?
Right at the heart of the teaching is this: our identification with the mind. That's the single greatest obstacle, according to Tolle.
He uses that parable, doesn't he?
Yeah.
The beggar on the box.
Yes, the beggar who sits on an old box for 30 years, totally unaware it's packed with gold. Then a stranger comes along and says, hey, have you looked inside?
And Tolle is the stranger in this analogy.
Pretty much. He's telling us to look inside ourselves for our true wealth, which he describes as the radiant joy of being and the deep, unshakable peace that comes with it.
Being. That word comes up a lot. What exactly is being?
It's absolutely central. He defines it as the eternal, ever-present one life. It's beyond all the forms we see, beyond things that are born and die. And for you, the listener, it's accessible now. It's your own deepest self, your true nature.
But there's a catch, right?
The catch is you can only know it when the mind is still. You can't think your way into being. It's not an intellectual concept. For Tolle, regaining awareness of being and learning to stay in that state of feeling realization, that is enlightenment.
So this raises a question many people probably have. If being is so fundamental, this sort of ultimate reality, Why not just call it God?
He addresses that. He feels the word God has become, in his words, empty of meaning through thousands of years of misuse. And often it creates this mental picture of, some old man in the sky, something outside of you.
So it's about the experience, not the label.
Exactly. He's less concerned with the word itself and more with whether that word helps or hinders you in actually experiencing that which it points towards. Direct experience is key.
Okay, so if using certain words can even be a barrier, what is the absolute biggest obstacle to experiencing this being, this reality?
It comes back to the mind, specifically our identification with the mind. This leads to compulsive, non-stop thinking.
He calls not being able to stop thinking an affliction, doesn't he?
A dreadful affliction, yes. It creates this incessant mental noise that just blocks out any possibility of inner stillness. And this constant mental chatter, he argues, creates a false mind-made self, a self that lives under this shadow of fear and suffering.
It sounds like he's taking aim at a cornerstone of Western thought.
Right.
Like Descartes' I think, therefore I am.
He directly critiques it. He says that statement expresses the most basic error, equating thinking with being and identity with thinking.
So what's the alternative view?
Tolle believes the compulsive thinker lives in the state of apparent separateness, stuck in this incredibly complex world of constant problems and conflict. Enlightenment, on the other hand, is a state of wholeness, of being at one, and therefore at peace. It's the end of that dreadful enslavement to incessant thinking.
And this identification, this thinking process creates like a screen.
Yeah, an opaque screen, he calls it, made up of all our concepts, labels, images, words, judgments, definitions, everything the mind churns out. And this screen blocks all true relationship.
With ourselves, too.
With ourselves, with other people, with nature, even with what he calls God or being. It's this screen that creates the illusion of separateness. It makes us forget that we're fundamentally connected, that we're part of this larger oneness.
We might believe in oneness intellectually.
Right. You can believe it all you want, but it only becomes truly liberating, he says, when you experience it directly.
Which brings us to his idea of watching the thinker. What does that actually involve? Does he mean we should try to stop thinking entirely?
He's clear about that you can't really stop thinking, maybe just for a moment or two. And actually, if you find you can't stop, that's a sign that the mind is using you, instead of the other way around.
Okay, so how do we start to gain some freedom?
The very beginning of freedom is realizing you're not that voice in your head. You're not that possessing entity. Watching the thinker simply means observing those involuntary thoughts. The constant monologues or dialogues running inside.
The one's usually commenting, judging, worrying.
Exactly. Complaining, reliving the past, rehearsing the future. All of that, just noticing it without getting caught up in it.
And he points out that this inner voice is often pretty harsh, right? Our own worst enemy.
Often, yes.
Yeah.
Continuously attacking, punishing, draining our energy, causing misery, sometimes even contributing to physical illness. But here's the crucial part. The simple act of watching that thinker that activates a higher level of consciousness. It reveals this vast realm of intelligence beyond thought. And that's where things like genuine beauty, love, creativity, joy, inner peace, that's where they actually come from, not from the thinking mind.
So the mind isn't creative. That seems counterintuitive.
He argues the mind is essentially a survival machine, great for attack, defense, gathering information, but not at all creative in the true sense. He points to true artists, saying they create from a place of no mind, from inner stillness.
He even brings in scientists like Einstein.
Right, citing Einstein saying that thinking only played a subordinate part in the actual creative act. Tolle suggests, maybe provocatively, that the reason many scientists aren't creative isn't because they don't know how to think.
But because they don't know how to stop thinking.
Exactly.
Okay, so the mind is one major obstacle. But Tolle identifies another huge one, doesn't he? Something about time.
Yes, the delusion of time. This is another cornerstone of his teaching.
And how does time relate to suffering?
He states it very clearly. Negativity and suffering have their roots in time. Think about it. Unease, anxiety, tension, stress, worry, fear.
Those are all future-oriented.
Right. Caused by too much future and not enough presence. And conversely, guilt, regret, resentment, grievances, sadness, bitterness, non-forgiveness.
All stuck in the past.
Too much past and not enough presence. It all comes back to not being fully here now.
But hang on, isn't looking towards the future sometimes a good thing? Hoping for something better. Planning.
Well, he argues that usually the future is just a replica of the past, Unless something changes fundamentally now, real transformation requires becoming present enough to actually dissolve the past by accessing the power of the now.
So our perception of the future is colored by our present state.
Absolutely. He says, what you perceive as future is an intrinsic part of your state of consciousness now. If you're anxious now, your imagined future will likely be anxious too.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do we actually do that? How do we step out of this time dimension we're constantly swimming in?
He offers some practical steps. One is just consciously withdrawing your attention from the past and future when you don't actually need them for a practical task. Like right now, listening to this, do you need to be thinking about dinner or yesterday's argument? Probably not.
Just bring the focus here.
Or, even simpler, just start by observing your mind's habit of always wanting to escape the now, always projecting forward or dwelling backward. And here's the trick. The very moment you realize you're not present.
In that moment, you are present.
Exactly. Awareness of non-presence is presence. It's that simple, yet profound.
This really applies to everyday life, doesn't it? Like waiting. We spend so much time waiting.
He asks that directly. Are you a habitual waiter? And he distinguishes between, small-scale waiting, waiting in line, waiting for the kettle to boil.
And the big stuff.
And large-scale waiting, waiting for a vacation, a better job, the right relationship, waiting to feel happy, even waiting for enlightenment itself. He observes that so many people spend their whole life waiting to start living.
Wow. That hits home. So what does this mean for something like prosperity? Isn't that usually about future goals?
True prosperity, in Tolle's view, cannot come in the future. It arises now. When you truly honor, acknowledge, and fully accept your present reality, where you are, who you are, what you're doing, right this second.
So gratitude for the present is prosperity.
Being grateful for what is right now, he says, is true prosperity. Then, often, as a result of that inner state, outer prosperity, the things we usually think of, tends to manifest later, but the starting point is now.
So give up waiting as a state of mind.
Yes, he challenges you to do that. If you're truly present, he says, there is never any need for you to wait for anything, because you're already complete in the now.
Okay, moving beyond the mind and time, he introduces another really specific concept, the pain body. What exactly is that?
The pain body. Yeah, it's a powerful idea. It's essentially this accumulation of old emotional pain, all the past hurts, traumas, sadness, anger that hasn't been fully processed or released.
And it becomes trapped energy.
Trapped life energy, he calls it. And it can take on this almost autonomous quality, like a separate entity living inside us, made of negative emotion.
How does it show up?
It manifests in all sorts of ways we experience as unhappiness. Irritation, impatience, a dark mood, wanting to lash out, anger, rage, depression. Sometimes even this weird need to create drama in relationships. It feeds on negativity.
Right, it sounds like it wants more pain to keep itself going, so how do we deal with it? Do we try and fight it or get rid of it?
No, fighting it just gives it more energy. The key, he says, is to catch it the moment it awakens from its dormant state, before it fully takes you over.
Catch it how?
By directing your attention into it, feeling the energy of it in your body, not analyzing why it's there, not judging it, just observing it, feeling it.
And that breaks the connection.
When you bring conscious attention to it, the identification is broken. You're no longer being the pain body, you're the awareness watching the pain body. This brings in that higher dimension of consciousness he calls presence.
You become the witness.
Exactly, the witness or the watcher. And then, he says, it cannot use you anymore by pretending to be you. It can't feed off your unconscious reactions. You've accessed the power of now by shining the light of your awareness onto it.
So we literally just watch it. We don't try to change it or fix it.
Watching it is enough. He puts it beautifully. Unconsciousness creates it. Consciousness transmutes it into itself.
Like light dissolving darkness.
Precisely. He quotes St. Paul. Everything is shown up by being exposed to the light, and whatever is exposed to the light itself becomes light. Trying to fight the pain body just creates more inner conflict, more pain. Watching it implies accepting it as part of what is in that moment. That acceptance, that conscious observation is what dissolves it.
Okay, that's powerful for inner work. What about our relationships with others? That's such a huge part of life, often where the most intense emotions and pain come up.
Absolutely. And Tolle has some pretty strong statements about relationships. He says that unless and until you access the consciousness frequency of presence, all relationships, and particularly intimate relationships, are deeply flawed and ultimately dysfunctional.
Deeply flawed and dysfunctional. That sounds quite pessimistic.
It can sound that way initially. He observes that most relationships we call love relationships actually become love-hate relationships pretty quickly. They swing back and forth between pleasure and pain, attraction and conflict. And we can get addicted to that intense cycle.
Why does he think that happens? Why are romantic relationships often so charged, both positively and negatively?
He attributes that initial intensity, that falling in love feeling, to its seeming ability to offer liberation. Liberation from this deep-seated state of fear, need, lack, and incompleteness that many people carry unconsciously.
It feels like salvation.
On a physical level, yes. It's the longing for wholeness, that return to oneness, manifesting as male-female attraction. He says sexual union can offer a fleeting glimpse of wholeness, a momentary bliss. But it's temporary. It's not lasting salvation if it's just sought at the level of form, the physical level.
And psychologically.
Psychologically, he says, that sense of lack and incompleteness is often even greater. This ties back to the ego, that false mind-made self.
How does the ego play into relationships?
The ego is always deriving its sense of self from external things, social roles, possessions, achievements, opinions of others. It feels inherently vulnerable, insecure, so it's constantly seeking new things to identify with to make it feel like it exists, like it's solid.
And another person can seem like the ultimate thing to identify with.
Exactly. But as Tolle points out, nothing external, no person, no achievement, no possession is ever enough to give it lasting fulfillment. The underlying fear and the neediness remain. The ego projects its need onto the other person, demanding they fill a hole that they simply can't fill.
Which inevitably leads to disappointment and conflict.
Right. It's a setup for constant disappointment. And he takes this further, making a really provocative claim. He says humanity is now under great pressure to evolve, essentially because it's our only chance of survival as a species.
And this pressure impacts relationships directly.
Yes, making them even more problematic and conflict-ridden than they are now. But then he offers this incredible reframe. He says, if you accept that the relationship is here to make you conscious instead of happy, then the relationship will offer you salvation.
Wow. Okay. Not to make you happy, but to make you conscious.
And you will be aligning yourself with the higher consciousness that wants to be born into this world. So the difficulties in relationship become opportunities for awakening rather than just sources of pain.
That completely shifts the perspective. It also makes me think about forgiveness differently.
It does, because he suggests the greatest catalyst for change in a relationship is complete acceptance of your partner as he or she is, without needing to judge them, without needing to change them in any way.
That sounds difficult.
It is difficult for the ego, but that very act of radical acceptance, he says, immediately takes you beyond ego. All the mind games, the addictive clinging, the neediness, they just fall away, because there's no egoic agenda left to drive them.
So if love isn't about finding someone to complete you or make you happy in that egoic sense, what is true love according to Tolle?
He's very clear. Love is a state of being. It's not something outside of you that you get from someone else. It's deep within you.
How do we access that?
Through presence. In the stillness of your presence, he says, you can feel your own formless and timeless reality, that unmanifested life that animates your physical body. And from that place, you can then feel that same life, that same being, deep within every other person, every other creature.
That leads to realizing our connection.
The realization of oneness. That, he states, is love. It's not selective. He compares it to the light of the sun. It shines on everything equally, without preference. Let's broaden out a bit then. We often chase happiness. But Tolle makes a key distinction between happiness and inner peace. What's the difference for him?
It's a crucial distinction. He says, happiness depends on conditions being perceived as positive. Inner peace does not.
Okay, so happiness is conditional, peace isn't.
Exactly. Happiness comes and goes with circumstances. Peace is deeper. It's independent of what's happening outside. This also challenges that common idea that if you just think positively, you'll only attract positive things. He asks, quite pointedly, do you truly know what is positive and what is negative?
Right. Because sometimes the things that seem negative turn out to be blessings in disguise.
That's his point. He argues that for many people, things like limitation, failure, loss, illness, or pain, things we label bad, actually turned out to be their greatest teacher.
How so?
These experiences can force you to let go of false self-images and superficial ego-dictated goals and desires. They can bring depth, humility, compassion. They can make you, in his words, more real.
That's a powerful way to look at adversity. It changes the whole frame. And from this higher perspective, he suggests, conditions are always positive, in the sense that they simply are. They are as they are. When you live in complete acceptance of what is, the labels good and bad dissolve. There's only maybe a higher good, which includes the bad.
He connects this to the story of Adam and Eve, doesn't he?
Yeah, eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He interprets that as the moment humanity started filtering reality through dualistic judgments, losing the ability to simply accept the isness of things.
And the ego is what keeps applying those judgments.
Yes, the unobserved mind, the ego, runs your life when you're not present as the watcher. It creates drama, constantly judging, comparing, complaining, even when you're alone.
We get attached to our stories, our drama.
He observes that most people are in love with their particular life drama. Their story is their identity. And what they often fear and resist the most is the end of their drama, because that feels like the end of them.
But ending the drama is the awakening.
Exactly. By allowing the isness of all things, by accepting the present moment without judgment, you access something deeper. An abiding presence, an unchanging deep stillness, an uncaused joy beyond good and bad. That, he says, is the peace of God.
So chasing happiness isn't really the point then.
Not in the conventional sense. He refers to the Buddhist teaching that even happiness is dukkha, which translates roughly as suffering or unsatisfactoriness.
Even happiness is suffering. That sounds bleak.
It's not meant to be negative, but realistic. Happiness in the ordinary sense is inseparable from its opposite, unhappiness, because it depends on conditions, and conditions always change. Things and situations can give you pleasure, sure, but they'll also eventually give you pain. They can't give you joy.
What's the difference between pleasure and joy?
Joy, for Tolle, is uncaused. It arises from within, simply as the joy of being itself. It's an essential part of that inner state of peace. It doesn't depend on anything external happening.
That reminds me of that story you mentioned earlier, the Buddhist monk summing up 20 years of practice.
Right. The monk who said, "All I have learned, I can sum up in one sentence. All that arises passes away. This I know."
What does Tolle take that to mean?
He interprets it as, I have learned to offer no resistance to what is. I have learned to allow the present moment to be and to accept the impermanent nature of all things and conditions. Thus have I found peace.
So non-resistance is the key to peace.
That state of non-resistance brings grace, ease, and lightness. And interestingly, he notes, when your interdependency on outer forms disappears, the actual conditions of your life, the outer forms, often tend to improve greatly. It's like a side effect of inner peace.
He also finds these lessons in unexpected places, like observing animals.
Yes, he suggests we just watch any plant or animal and let it teach you acceptance of what is, surrender to the now. He humorously talks about living with several Zen masters, all of them cats.
And the ducks.
And the ducks. He observed ducks having a fight, and then immediately afterward, they just flap their wings a few times and swim off peacefully as if nothing happened.
What did he learn from that?
He realized they were instantly releasing surplus energy, preventing it from getting trapped in their body and turning into negativity, into resentment or grudges. He calls it their natural wisdom because they don't have a mind that constantly keeps the past alive, replaying grievances. They just live now.
Okay, so if the goal is to access this state of presence, this being beyond the noisy mind and the illusion of time, how do we actually do it? What are the practical entry points?
He offers several access points, or portals as he calls them, into presence. One absolutely crucial one is inhabiting the body.
Inhabiting the body. What does that mean practically?
It means bringing your attention inside your physical form. He explains that presence is pure consciousness that's been reclaimed from the mind from constant thinking. And your inner body, the feeling of aliveness within, is your direct link to what he calls the unmanifested.
The unmanifested. Can you unpack that a bit?
Yeah. Think of it as the source. The formless, silent, still potentiality from which all forms, including consciousness itself, arise. It's the deep background reality. Your inner body awareness connects you to that source.
So a practice for listeners right now could just be feeling their hands from the inside.
Yeah.
Or their feet.
Exactly. He invites you. Direct your attention into the body. Feel it from within. Is it alive? Feel the subtle energy field in your hands, arms, legs, feet. Is there life there?
And focusing on that feeling intensifies it.
Yes, the more attention you give it, the stronger the feeling becomes. It's like every cell is becoming more alive. And he notes this isn't just spiritual, it has physical benefits too. It strengthens the immune system, acts as a powerful form of self-healing.
He has that striking idea that most illnesses creep in when you are not present in the body.
Right, the analogy. If the master is not present in the house, all kinds of shady characters will take up residence there. When your conscious presence isn't inhabiting your body, it's more vulnerable.
Okay, so inner body awareness is one portal. What else?
Another powerful portal is silence.
Silence. How does that work as a portal?
He points out the fundamental nature of silence. Every sound is born out of silence, eventually dies back into silence, and even while it exists, it's surrounded by silence.
So, listening to the silence, not just the sounds.
Yes. Or becoming aware of the gaps between sounds, the brief silent intervals between words when someone is speaking, or between notes in music. As you become aware of that underlying silence, he says, the dimension of stillness grows within you. Silence without leads to stillness within. You've entered the unmanifested.
That's fascinating. And then there's a related concept, space.
Exactly. Just like silence is the necessary ground for sound, empty space, no thing is necessary for anything to exist. Even brings in physics here.
The idea that matter is mostly empty space.
Right. Physicists say seemingly solid matter is nearly 100% empty space. Buddhists have pointed this out for centuries. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. They are inseparable.
So how does contemplating space become a portal for us?
He suggests something interesting. You cannot think and be aware of space, or of silence for that matter, at the same time. Try it. Become aware of the empty space in the room around you, the space between objects, the space the sounds happen in.
It does quiet the mind.
When you become aware of that outer space, he says, you simultaneously become aware of the space of no mind, of pure consciousness, the unmanifested. The contemplation of physical space opens up the inner space of presence.
And he connects space and time here, too, referencing Einstein.
Yes, agreeing with Einstein that space and time aren't separate. He calls them almost like the two essential attributes of God, infinity, space, and eternity, time perceived as if they exist outside us. But within you, space is the still, infinitely deep realm of no mind, and the inner equivalent of time isn't clock time, but presence, awareness of the eternal now.
Tolle uses some really strong imagery around these portals. He says, every portal is a portal of death, the death of the false self. That sounds quite final. What does he mean?
It means letting go of deriving your sense of who you are from that psychological, mind-made form, your thoughts, your history, your roles. When you go through that death, that surrender of the false self, you realize that death itself is an illusion, just like your identification with form was an illusion.
Is it painful?
He says it's painful only as long as you cling to illusion. It's the resistance, the clinging to the false self, that causes the pain, not the letting go itself.
This makes me think immediately of religious or spiritual traditions, like the Christian phrase, the way of the cross, where people seem to find God or transformation through intense suffering. Does he speak to that?
He addresses it directly. He clarifies that people didn't find God through their suffering itself, because suffering inherently implies resistance. Rather, he says they found God through surrender, through the total acceptance of what is, which they were often forced into by the intensity of their suffering.
So suffering can force surrender.
Yes. He calls the way of the cross the old way to enlightenment, and acknowledges it still works. It's like being forced into the kingdom of heaven, kicking and screaming. You finally give up because the pain becomes unbearable.
But there's another way.
Yes, what he calls enlightenment consciously chosen. This means actively choosing to relinquish your attachment to past and future, and to make the now the main focus of your life. Choosing presence over time.
Saying yes to what is, voluntarily.
Exactly. So you don't need pain anymore to push you into surrender. You choose it.
He has a pretty stark view of where humanity is at if we don't make this shift, doesn't he? Calling us dangerously insane and very sick.
He does believe that if the human race is to survive, it will have to go on to the next stage of conscious evolution. He sees signs of a profound transformation taking place in the collective consciousness, an awakening from the dream of matter, form, and separation, the ending of time.
So given that collective picture, what can we do as individuals? How can we contribute to this shift and help lessen suffering both in ourselves and in the world?
His emphasis is always that true change happens within, not without. If you feel called to help alleviate suffering in the world, which is a natural impulse he advises strongly, don't focus exclusively on the outer.
Why not?
Because if you only focus on fixing external problems without addressing the inner dimension of consciousness, you'll likely encounter frustration and despair. The problems often stem from unconsciousness.
So we need to balance outer action with inner awareness.
Yes. Balance empathy for suffering with a deeper realization of the eternal nature of all life and the ultimate illusion of all pain. Then you let your inner peace flow into whatever you do. That way, he says, you will be working on the levels of effect and cause simultaneously. You become an agent of peace through your very presence.
This really brings it back to a personal choice, doesn't it?
Yeah.
He essentially asks the listener, have you truly had enough suffering yet?
He poses it very directly. Would you choose unhappiness? He asks. Probably not. If you did not choose it, how did it arise? What is its purpose? Who is keeping it alive?
And the answer points back to us.
He asserts that if you were conscious, that is to say, totally present in the deeder, now all negativity would dissolve almost instantly. It could not survive in your presence. Negativity can only survive in your absence from the present moment.
So we keep it alive by giving it time.
You keep your unhappiness alive by giving it time. That is its lifeblood, he concludes. Remove time through intense present moment awareness, and it dies.
Wow, what a truly profound deep dive into the power of now. We've covered so much ground from Tolle's personal story to the core obstacle of identifying with the mind, the illusion of time, the nature of the pain body, and how all this reframes relationships and even our view of happiness itself.
The core message really echoes throughout, doesn't it? That true salvation, true peace, isn't out there in the future somewhere or dependent on changing our circumstances. It's right here, right now.
It all comes back to letting go of resistance.
Embracing the present moment fully and realizing that radiant joy of being he talks about is already within you. It's just covered up by the noise.
It's about becoming that watcher of the mind, finding freedom from the shatter, and tapping into that deeper intelligence beyond thought. Realizing the biggest obstacle isn't out there, but it's actually inside, just waiting for our conscious attention.
Exactly. And so maybe we can leave you, our listener, with this final thought from Tolle to chew on. He suggests that when you truly accept what is in any given moment, then in a way, every piece of meat, every moment is the best. So the question is, what best are you currently missing out on right now simply by not fully accepting this present moment?